Chosen one, money has been responding to you, not avoiding you. There is a quiet misunderstanding that has followed you for much of your life, a belief whispered by disappointment and reinforced by delay, that money has somehow learned your name only to turn away when you approach. You have felt it in the tightening of your chest when bills arrive, in the way opportunities seem to circle others while passing you by, in the nagging thought that perhaps abundance is fluent in every language except yours. But what if this story is entirely backward? What if money has not been fleeing from you at all, but responding to you, listening to the posture of your heart, the direction of your thoughts, the weight of your intentions? What if money, like so many other created things, moves not toward noise and desperation, but toward clarity, stewardship, and purpose? We are often taught to think of money as a thing with a will of its own, a cruel master or a fickle friend, appearing and vanishing according to laws we are too small to understand. Yet money, in truth, is far less mysterious than we pretend. It behaves much like water. It flows where there is space to receive it, where channels are prepared, where the ground is shaped not by panic but by patience. When we clench our fists in fear, we should not be surprised if little remains inside them. When we open our hands, not in carelessness but in trust, we create room for movement, and movement is the language money understands. You see, you were never meant to chase money as though it were prey. Chasing implies lack, and lack is a loud signal that repels the very thing you pursue. You were meant to become someone who can host it, guide it, and release it without trembling. Money responds not to your hunger but to your readiness. It listens for maturity, it waits for wisdom, and it has been watching you far longer than you realize. Think back to the seasons when you learned restraint instead of impulse, when you chose growth over display, when you invested quietly in skills, character, and understanding while others spent loudly to impress strangers. Those moments were not invisible. Money noticed. Every time you resisted the urge to prove yourself with possessions, you signaled that you were becoming someone who could be trusted with more. Every time you delayed gratification, choosing depth over speed, you were speaking a language older than markets and stronger than trends. The world often praises those who seem to fall into wealth overnight, but such stories are usually edited versions of a longer narrative. What is hidden are the years of preparation, the unseen discipline, the private reshaping of thought and habit. You too have been in that hidden place. It has felt like obscurity, like neglect, like being overlooked. But obscurity is not abandonment, it is training. A sword is not forged in the open square, but in the heat and pressure of the fire. The fire does not hate the sword, it is shaping it. Money has been responding to you in the same way. It has been waiting until your inner life could support the outer increase. Because wealth without wisdom does not bless, it consumes. It magnifies whatever is already present. If fear lives within, money will amplify fear. If generosity lives within, money will amplify generosity. If purpose lives within, money becomes a servant to that purpose, rather than a tyrant over it. You have been learning, sometimes painfully, to let purpose lead. There is also the matter of your words, those quiet sentences you repeat to yourself when no one else is listening. Words are not as harmless as we like to believe. They form the architecture of expectation. When you say, even silently, that money avoids you, you build walls it politely refuses to climb. When you speak as though scarcity is your natural state, you describe a home you will continue to live in. But when you begin, even trembling, to speak differently, to say that provision finds you, that opportunity recognizes you, that resources align with your calling, you begin to remodel that inner house. Money, being perceptive, responds to the renovation. This is not the foolish chanting of empty phrases, but the sober alignment of belief with truth. You were not designed for perpetual lack. You were designed for stewardship, and stewardship requires supply. The garden was given before the task of tending it, not after. Provision precedes assignment. The delay you experienced was not denial, but preparation, not avoidance, but alignment. Consider how often you have been protected from what you once begged for. The job that did not materialize, the partnership that dissolved before it began, the deal that fell through at the last moment. At the time, it felt like rejection. In hindsight, some of those moments now appear as mercy. Money did not avoid you then, either. It withheld itself because the cost would have been greater than the gain. You were being spared from tying your future to structures that could not sustain it. There is a dignity in being entrusted slowly. It suggests that something valuable is at stake. No one rushes a child into responsibilities that could break them. Growth is paced according to capacity, and capacity is not merely the ability to earn, but the ability to hold, direct, and release without losing oneself. You have been expanding that capacity, often without realizing it. Through patience, through humility, through learning to live well even when resources felt thin. Money has also been responding to your generosity, especially the kind no one applauds. The quiet help you offered, the unseen giving, the willingness to share time, energy, and attention, even when you felt you had little to spare. Generosity is not measured by amount, but by proportion. When you give from scarcity, you declare trust louder than when you give from abundance. And trust is magnetic. Money moves toward those who are not enslaved by it, those who can release it without panic because it knows it will not be imprisoned. There, you may not have noticed, but money has been circling closer. It has been testing the ground, sending small opportunities, modest increases, subtle invitations. Each one was a question, not a reward. Will you manage this well? Will you remain grounded? Will you let this serve your values rather than replace them? Your responses to these smaller things have been shaping what comes next. It is tempting to think that once a certain number is reached, peace will arrive. But peace does not wait at the finish line of accumulation. It walks alongside alignment. If your inner life is disordered, no amount will quiet it. If your inner life is anchored, even modest provision feels sufficient. You have been learning to anchor yourself, not in the promise of wealth, but in the steadiness of purpose. That is why money has been responding differently to you now. It senses that it will not become your god. There is also courage involved, a kind you rarely credit yourself for. The courage to imagine a future larger than survival. The courage to believe that your work has value, that your ideas are worth compensation, that receiving does not make you greedy. Many people block abundance not because they lack skill, but because they secretly believe they are unworthy of support. You have been dismantling that belief piece by piece, learning that worth is not earned by exhaustion, but affirmed by design. As you stand now, perhaps still not where you wish to be, but no longer where you were, it is important to recognize the shift. Money is not avoiding you. It is responding to the new signals you are sending, signals of clarity instead of confusion, signals of intention instead of desperation, signals of stewardship instead of consumption. These signals are quiet, but they are unmistakable. What comes next will require the same steadiness that brought you here. Sudden increases test character more severely than long delays. You will need to remain attentive, thoughtful, and anchored. You will need to remember that money is a tool, not a verdict on your worth, not a measure of your soul. It will come to you in ways that surprise you, through channels you did not predict, often arrive. As opportunity before it arrives as currency. Stay awake in those moments. Do not rush past them in disbelief. Receive them with gratitude, handle them with wisdom, and release them with purpose. In doing so, you continue the conversation you have already been having with provision, a conversation marked not by pleading but by partnership. Because the truth, though it may feel strange to say aloud, is that money recognizes you now. It has learned your pace, your values, your boundaries. It knows you're becoming someone who can hold abundance without losing humility, who can increase without forgetting why increase matters. And as this recognition deepens, as trust grows on both sides, you will notice that what once felt like resistance begins to feel like response. What once felt like absence begins to feel like approach. And what once felt delayed begins to move with a quiet inevitability, unfolding step by step. opportunity by opportunity, as you continue to walk forward with the same measured faith, the same grounded expectation, the same willingness to let purpose lead and provision follow, even as the next chapter opens in ways you are only just beginning to sense, as the rhythm of your life shifts again, inviting you to listen more closely, to choose more carefully, to prepare for what is already on its way, because this story is not ending here. It is still gathering momentum, still shaping itself around the person you are becoming, still responding to the posture of your heart as you move into the days ahead where the alignment deepens and the flow increases and the quiet understanding grows that what is coming will require not only celebration but discern, and not only reception but responsibility, and that the path before you, though clearer than before, is still asking you to walk it with attention, with courage, and with the same steady trust that has carried you this far, even as you begin to notice that the space around you is changing, the possibilities widening, the signals strengthening, and the conversation between you and provision continuing in a way that suggests that what you once thought was avoidance was actually preparation, and what you are stepping into now is only the beginning of what will unfold as you continue to move forward without haste, without fear, and without losing sight of why this journey matters at all, especially as the next opportunities begin to present themselves in forms that ask you to choose to respond and to decide how you will carry what is being placed into your hands, as the rhythm continues and the story presses on into what comes next and what follows after that, and how you will remain anchored as the movement increases and the unfolding accelerates and the invitation becomes clearer and clearer the further you go. And as that invitation grows clearer, you may notice something subtle happening within you, a shift so gentle it could be mistaken for imagination, yet so persistent it cannot be ignored. You begin to feel less hurried. The frantic edge that once drove your decisions starts to dull, replaced by a calm attentiveness. This is not complacency. It is confidence without arrogance. It is the quiet assurance of someone who knows they are no longer begging life for permission to exist fully. Money responds well to this state because it recognizes steadiness. It recognizes someone who is no longer trying to prove their value through accumulation, but ready to express their value through contribution. You may also find that your relationship with time is changing. Where once you measured your days by what was missing, you now begin to notice what is forming. Time no longer feels like an enemy stealing your chances, but a companion arranging them. Patience, once forced upon you, becomes a chosen posture, and patience, strange as it may sound in a world obsessed with speed, is one of the most attractive qualities to opportunity. It signals endurance. It tells money that you will not squander tomorrow for the thrill of today. There will be moments, of course, when old fears resurface. Years of scarcity do not disappear overnight. They whisper when you least expect them to, urging you to hoard, to grasp, to make decisions rooted in self-protection rather than wisdom. When that happens, do not condemn yourself. Awareness itself is progress. Simply pause and ask whether the choice before you is aligned with who you are becoming or who you are leaving behind. Money responds powerfully to such discernment because discernment is evidence of growth. As provision increases, you will discover that abundance is less about numbers and more about options. The true gift of resources is not excess, but freedom, the freedom to choose integrity over convenience, rest over exhaustion, generosity over fear. With each new option comes responsibility, not as a burden but as an invitation to maturity, and maturity, once again, is something money recognizes instantly. You may be surprised by how much your inner world continues to shape your outer results. Thou, you once dismissed as harmless background noise, now reveal their influence. When you think of yourself as capable, opportunities seem to agree. When you see your work as valuable, compensation begins to reflect that belief. This is not coincidence, it is coherence. Life tends to organize itself around the stories we consistently tell and quietly believe. Do not underestimate the importance of gratitude in this unfolding. Gratitude is not a polite ritual reserved for polite company, it is a powerful orientation of the soul. When you acknowledge what is already present, you signal readiness for more. Gratitude tells money that it will be noticed, respected, and used with care. Complaining, on the other hand, no matter how justified it feels, keeps you anchored to lack. You are learning to shift your focus, not by denying reality, but by interpreting it wisely. There will also be times when you must say no, even when the offer seems tempting. Not every opportunity is aligned, and not every increase is meant for you. Saying no when necessary is a declaration of self-trust. It tells money that you are not desperate, that you value direction over distraction. Such boundaries do not repel abundance, they refine it. You might notice that as your confidence grows, envy loses its grip. The success of others no longer feels like an accusation against you. Instead, it becomes evidence of what is possible. This is a profound shift. Envy repels, but inspiration attracts. When you can celebrate someone else's provision without resentment, you align yourself with the same current that carries them. Money responds to this openness because it thrives in environments free of compare, and competition. Your work, whatever form it takes, begins to feel more meaningful. Even tasks that once felt mundane acquire significance when connected to a larger purpose. Purpose infuses effort with dignity, and dignity, though rarely discussed in financial conversations, is a powerful force. People are drawn to those who respect themselves and their labor. Compensation often follows that respect. As the flow continues, you may find yourself revisiting old dreams you once shelved as impractical. Ideas that felt too risky or unrealistic now seem worth reconsidering. This does not mean rushing headlong into them, but allowing them back into your imagination. Imagination is not escapism, it is rehearsal. It prepares you to recognize opportunity when it arrives. Money often appears first as an idea before it appears as income. Be mindful, too, of the company you keep. Conversations shape consciousness. Surrounding yourself with voices that normalize lack will quietly erode your progress. Seek out those who speak with realism but not cynicism, ambition without greed, confidence without pretense. Such environments reinforce the internal shifts you are making. Money moves easily through networks grounded in trust and shared values. There is a humility required in all of this, a willingness to remain teachable even as circumstances improve. Pride isolates, but humility connects. When you remain open to learning, feedback, and growth, you keep your channels clear. Money responds not only to competence, but to adaptability. The world changes quickly, and those who can adjust without losing their center are best positioned to thrive. You may also experience moments of generosity that feel almost instinctive, as though something within you knows exactly when and how to give. Trust that instinct. Giving, when done wisely, creates circulation. It keeps energy moving. Stagnation, whether emotional or financial, often begins when we cling too tightly. Circulation signals health. Money, like blood in the body, must move to sustain life. As your resources grow, so will your influence, even if subtly. Influence is not always public or loud. Sometimes it is as simple as being able to say yes where you once had to say no, to support where you once had to withdraw. Influence carries weight, and weight requires balance. Remain anchored in the values that guided you when resources were scarce. They are not obsolete. They are foundational. There will be days when progress feels slow again, when increases plateau and questions resurface. These seasons are not failures. They are recalibrations. Growth often happens in cycles, not straight lines. Trust the rhythm. Trust that pauses serve a purpose, that reflection deepens capacity. Money does not vanish in these moments. It waits, watching how you respond. Remember that your worth has never been measured by your bank balance. Abundance is a tool, not an identity. When you confuse the two, you risk becoming enslaved by what was meant to serve you. Keep your identity rooted in character, calling, and contribution. From that place, Wealth can come and go without shaking your foundation. You are learning, perhaps for the first time, to receive without guilt, to accept provision without apologizing for it. This is a holy skill. Many can give, few can receive well. Receiving requires humility, trust, and self-respect. It acknowledges interdependence rather than self-sufficiency. Money responds to those who can receive with grace, because grace keeps the flow unblocked. As you move forward, let your decisions be guided by alignment rather than impulse. Ask not only whether something is profitable, but whether it is fitting. Fit sustains, misalignment drains. Even lucrative paths can become costly if they erode your integrity or peace. You have learned this through experience, and that knowledge now serves as protection. The narrative of your life is shifting from survival to stewardship, from striving to guidance. You are no longer merely reacting to circumstances, you are shaping them. This does not make you immune to challenge, but it does make you resilient. Resilience is one of the most valuable currencies there is, and it attracts support in ways that are often unexpected. Pay attention to the small confirmations along the way, the timely conversation, the unexpected opening, the resource that arrives just when needed. These are not accidents. They are signals that you are in conversation with provision, that your posture is being answered. Gratitude for these moments strengthens the connection, making you more attentive and responsive. As the days unfold, you may sense that your definition of success is evolving. It becomes less about accumulation and more about alignment, less about recognition and more about impact. This evolution is not a loss, it is a refinement. Money aligns more easily with refined intentions than with vague ambition. Stay curious. Curiosity keeps you engaged without pressure. It invites exploration rather than forcing outcomes. When you approach opportunities with curiosity, you remain open to learning and adjustment. Money responds well to curiosity because it signals growth rather than rigidity. There is still more ahead, more than you can currently see or imagine, but you do not need to see it all at once. Clarity comes step by step, often just in time. Your task is not to control the entire journey, but to remain present and responsive. Presence sharpens perception. Perception guides choice. Choice shapes destiny. You have come far from the days when lack defined your outlook and fear dictated your decisions. That chapter taught you endurance, empathy, and depth. It was not wasted. It prepared you to hold what is coming with wisdom. Money did not avoid you then. It respected the process you were in. Now, as you continue forward, remain grounded in the quiet truth that provision is not chasing you, and you are not chasing it. You are meeting each other in alignment, responding to shared signals of readiness and purpose. The rhythm continues, steady and intentional, carrying you into moments that will test and reveal you, asking you again and again to choose trust over fear, clarity over confusion, stewardship over excess. As the story keeps unfolding, not rushing toward an ending, but deepening into meaning, expanding into responsibility, and moving onward in a way that suggests that what lies ahead will require even greater attentiveness, even deeper wisdom, and an even stronger commitment to remain aligned as the flow increases and the path widens, and the conversation with provision continues, without interruption, without finality, without conclusion, as you keep walking, listening, responding, and becoming, step by deliberate step, into all that is still forming before you and all that has yet to reveal itself as the journey presses on. And, as you keep walking, you begin to realize that the greatest change has not been in your circumstances but in your sight. You see differently now. Where you once saw closed doors, you now see timing. Where you once saw rejection, you now see redirection. This shift in perception is not optimism for its own sake. It is maturity born of experience. And maturity has a way of drawing resources toward itself, because it promises that what is given will not be wasted. You notice how easily panic once hijacked your decisions. A small setback could send you spiraling into worst-case scenarios, convincing you that everything was about to collapse. Now, even when challenges arise, there is a steadiness beneath your concern. You still feel the weight of responsibility, but it no longer crushes you. This emotional stability is not separate from provision, it is part of the infrastructure that sustains it. Money does not flourish in chaos. It seeks environments where clarity reigns, where reactions are measured, where choices are made from understanding rather than fear. There is also a gentler relationship forming between you and effort. You still work diligently, but the strain has lessened. You no longer believe that exhaustion is proof of worth. You have learned that fruitfulness does not always require frenzy. Sometimes it requires focus. Sometimes it requires rest. Rest, though often misunderstood, is not the absence of productivity, but the restoration of perspective. When you rest well, you see well. When you see well, you choose well. And when you choose well, resources follow. You may find yourself increasingly uninterested in appearances. The need to impress fades as the desire to be effective grows stronger. This is another quiet marker of readiness. Money is not impressed by performance, it responds to authenticity. When you stop trying to look successful and start aiming to be faithful with what is in front of you, something loosens in the flow. Pretending drains energy. Being real releases it. As this continues, you become more aware of the stories you once inherited about wealth, stories shaped by fear, guilt, or misunderstanding. Some taught you that money was dangerous, that it corrupted, that it inevitably pulled people away from what mattered most. Others taught you that struggle was noble and ease was suspect. You are learning to examine these beliefs without contempt, to honor their origins while refusing their limitations. Money itself is neutral. It takes the shape of the hands that hold it and the heart that directs it. You also begin to understand that abundance does not arrive to replace discipline, but to reward it. The habits you formed in lean seasons now serve you in seasons of increase. Budgeting, planning, reflection, intentionality. These are not relics of lack, but pillars of stewardship. You do not abandon them when resources grow, you deepen them. Money responds positively to continuity. It trusts those who remain consistent regardless of circumstance. There is a deeper humility forming as well, a recognition that you did not arrive here by strength alone. You were helped, guided, corrected, protected, sometimes in ways you only recognize now. This humility keeps you grounded. It prevents entitlement. Entitlement repels provision because it assumes rather than appreciates. Gratitude, by contrast, remains alert and responsive. As opportunities expand, discernment becomes increasingly important. You cannot pursue everything. Focus becomes a form of respect, both for your energy and for the resources entrusted to you. Scattered effort dilutes impact. Concentrated intention multiplies it. You are learning to choose depth over breadth, quality over quantity. Money aligns well with focus because focus amplifies effectiveness. You may notice that conversations about money no longer intimidate you as they once did. You can discuss value, pricing, compensation, and exchange without shrinking or posturing. This ease reflects an internal alignment. When you believe your contribution matters, negotiation becomes a dialogue rather than a defense. Money responds to clarity in these exchanges because clarity builds trust. There is also a subtle shift in how you view risk. You are no longer reckless, but neither are you paralyzed. You assess, you prepare, you move thoughtfully. Courage tempered by wisdom creates momentum. Money does not shy away from calculated risk, it avoids blind impulse. Your growing ability to balance faith with prudence signals readiness for greater responsibility. You are beginning to sense that provision often arrives disguised as invitation, an introduction, a collaboration, a chance to learn, a door cracked open just enough to require a step of trust. These moments ask something of you before they give something to you. They test your willingness to engage, to stretch, to respond. Money often follows motion, not frantic motion, but intentional movement. As this rhythm continues, you may find that your past hardships give you a unique sensitivity to others. You understand struggle not as an abstract concept but as lived experience. This empathy shapes how you use what you receive. Compassion directed by wisdom creates impact. Money placed in such hands becomes a force for restoration rather than division. You are also learning the difference between urgency and importance. Urgency shouts, importance whispers. When you learn to listen for the whisper, your choices become more strategic. You invest time and resources in what endures rather than what dazzles. Money responds to this long-term vision because sustainability attracts support. There will be moments when you are tempted to look back with regret, to tally what you lost during years of waiting. Resist this temptation. Regret anchors you to what cannot be changed. Reflection, on the other hand, informs what can. Your past was not wasted, it was formative. It taught you resilience, perspective, and discernment. These qualities now serve as safeguards as increase arrives. You may also notice that as your sense of lack diminishes, creativity expands. Fear constricts imagination. Security, even modest, frees it. Ideas flow more easily. Solutions appear where problems once dominated your thinking. Creativity is a form of wealth in itself, often preceding financial increase. Money recognizes creativity because creativity generates value. Be attentive to the pace of your life. Speed can be intoxicating, especially when things begin to move after a long delay, but acceleration without alignment leads to burnout. You have learned to respect rhythm, to allow growth to be integrated rather than overwhelming. Integration ensures longevity. Money responds to those who can sustain progress without collapsing under its weight. You may find that your prayers, hopes, or intentions around provision have changed tone. They are less about rescue and more about partnership, less about escape and more about effectiveness. This shift reflects a deeper confidence in your role and responsibility. You are no longer asking to be spared from the journey, but to be guided through it wisely. As you continue, remain mindful of how you speak about money, especially in moments of frustration. Words shape atmosphere. Even casual complaints can reinforce old patterns. Choose language that reflects trust rather than dread, possibility rather than limitation. This is not denial, it is alignment. Alignment keeps channels open. There is also a growing sense that your life is interconnected with others in ways you cannot fully measure. Your choices ripple outward, influencing people you may never meet. This awareness brings both humility and responsibility. Money entrusted to you participates in these ripples. How you use it matters beyond your immediate circle. You are learning to celebrate progress without becoming complacent. Celebration acknowledges growth. Complacency halts it. Gratitude paired with vigilance keeps you moving forward. You honor what has been achieved while remaining attentive to what is required next. As the journey unfolds, you may encounter moments that test your integrity more than your skill. Shortcuts, compromises, invitations that promise quick gain at long-term cost. These moments are thresholds. How you respond determines the quality of what follows. Integrity is expensive in the short term, but invaluable in the long term. Money that comes at the cost of integrity always extracts interest later. You are also discovering that simplicity has power. Not every increase needs to complicate your life. Not every new option must be exercised. Choosing simplicity where possible preserves clarity. Clarity sustains peace. Peace enhances judgment. Money responds well to environments where judgment is clear and unclouded. There is a growing ease in your generosity as well. You give not to prove anything, not to earn favor, but because you recognize abundance as a shared resource. This generosity is not reckless, it is intentional. It flows from discernment rather than pressure. Money circulates naturally in such hands because it is neither idolized nor feared. As you look ahead, you may sense that the path will continue to stretch you, not by depriving you, but by inviting you to grow into greater responsibility. Increase always asks for expansion of capacity. You have been expanding quietly for a long time. Now that expansion is beginning to show externally. Stay attentive to the small nudges, the quiet convictions, the subtle prompts that guide your decisions. These are often more reliable than dramatic signs. Wisdom rarely shouts. It speaks calmly, persistently. Money responds to those who listen. You are no longer the person who once believed they were overlooked or forgotten. That belief has been dismantled, not by sudden windfall, but by steady transformation. You see now that attention was always on you, shaping, refining, preparing. Money did not avoid you. It waited for you to recognize yourself. And so the rhythm continues, unbroken and unresolved, carrying you forward into moments that will ask you to apply everything you have learned, to remain grounded as the stakes rise, to stay aligned as the flow increases, to keep listening as the noise grows louder around you, to remember who you are becoming even as circumstances change, to walk with the same steady awareness that has brought you here, knowing that this movement is not rushing toward an ending but deepening into responsibility, widening into impact, unfolding into opportunities that will require careful choice and thoughtful response. As the conversation between you and provision carries on without final punctuation, without a closing statement, without a tidy resolution, continuing onward as you step into what comes next and what follows after, remaining present, remaining discerning, remaining faithful to the posture that has opened these doors, even as the journey stretches forward and the story keeps moving. Still in motion, still responding, still becoming. In the end, let this truth settle gently but firmly within you. You were never overlooked, never excluded, never abandoned to chance. Every delay refined you. Every quiet season strengthened you. Every unanswered moment taught you how to listen more deeply. What once felt like resistance was actually alignment, taking shape beneath the surface. Now you stand with clearer vision, steadier hands, and a heart trained for stewardship rather than striving. Money, opportunity, and provision are no longer strangers to you, because you have become someone who can meet them without fear and without pride. Walk forward with that understanding. Remain attentive, remain grounded, remain faithful to purpose over impulse. What flows to you next will not be an accident, nor will it be a test meant to break you, but a continuation of the shaping that has brought you here. And as you carry what is placed into your hands with wisdom and humility, you will discover that this journey was never about wealth alone, but about becoming whole, trustworthy, and ready for all that was patiently waiting for you to arrive.